when I moved from one state to another state. That's homelessness,
Mm.
at housing and things like that. So, if you want to touch on that a little bit, I have seen that a couple of places have some situation with homelessness. I've been to San Francisco, Philadelphia, a lot of Chicago. People tend to be on the street and things like that. So, looking on the side of the Washington D.C., how is the situation unique? Quite different from other places.
Yeah, we have a huge homelessness and housing insecurity situation here. We recently ripped away people's rental rights, so it makes it easier for them to be evicted locally, as well as we're seeing just the pressures of the federal government impact us. As I mentioned before, DC is not a state. So the federal government has a lot more influence on our laws than, say, our friends in Maryland and our neighbors in Virginia. So
Hmm.
when Donald Trump first instituted the National Guard deployment and occupation, he also targeted the homeless encampments. So people living in tents. He was removing those people. And, we use the term homeless loosely. These people do have homes. They're just unhoused. So their tent is their home. So when the National Guard and beyond were shucking people's tents away and throwing away all the belongings, people were losing family pictures. People were losing their relatives' ashes. People were losing their identifications, and it made it that much harder for them to get their lives back on track. If you look at the data, it takes far less money to keep someone in their home than it does to get them in a home once they're on the street. So we need to invest more funding in rapid rehousing. We need to support folks who are on the brink of losing their homes. We need to make sure young people, like parents who are facing housing insecurity, are also taken care of, because if their kids now end up on the street. Now you're affecting their educational experiences. It'll be harder for them to concentrate if they're hungry. They won't be able to read on grading level. And if you look at the future of people who aren't reading at grading level, it's usually not positive. When I was doing my exposure clinics with a lot of these returning citizens, folks who face incarceration, many of them who had criminal records or criminal histories dating back to their teenage years were struggling to read at a grade level. A lot of that could be traced to food equity. A lot of that could be traced to housing security. So if we pay for these things on the front end, then we don't have to waste so much money on incarcerating people. We don't have to waste so much money on getting people back on track if we get people on track in the beginning. So houselessness is a huge issue in DC. And my goal is to reinvest in not only in the programs, but also the folks who make a difference. Now, if this was a healthcare conversation, I could be on this
Yeah.
call for 3 hours without taking a breath. But also, when it comes to housing, I got to lean on the people who've been making a difference for decades. And right now, they're being disinvested from.